people. Just saw Spider-Man Homecoming, wanted to record my thoughts and kind of give my opinion on the movie as a whole. And didn't really feel like having to go in and edit in a bunch of different backgrounds and whatnot. So what you see is what you get, and I do apologize for that. Went opening night here, dressed thematically, appropriately. God, I love this shirt. But my thoughts on the movie are a little complex, I guess you'd say. There's some things in this movie that, worked, and some that didn't. Some that I really, really liked, and some that I didn't. And I just kind of want to, I don't feel right just, grading it as a whole without kind of giving you an idea of where I'm coming from and, what was okay with me, what wasn't, etc. First and foremost, I do want to say I'm perfectly okay with a high school setting. I think that in the context of the MCU, it actually makes a lot more sense to have a young Spider-Man, at least to start, simply because, what's the best way to explain, well then, where was Spider-Man when the Chitauri invaded? Where was Spider-Man, with Ultron? Where was Spider-Man, all these other times? And there's your answer. Whereas when he's an adult, it's kind of harder to create an alibi unless you want to significantly change his origin, and he's suddenly a much older individual when he gets his powers, which I think more people would have actually taken objection to. I mean, that's something that even people who liked, for example, the Spider-Man animated series weren't terribly fond of. I mean, it wouldn't be the biggest deal, but I mean they're trying to avoid like hiccups, and I understand that because it's been kind of a rocky road to even get here. But one thing I do want to say is stop defending it the way you're defending it, and what I mean by that is all these people when they try to defend the creative decision, it's like be honest, okay? Be honest. We had to set it when he's in high school because, narratively speaking, him being any other age wouldn't work. I mean, that's all you gotta say. But instead we get to hear all this talk about how, we're doing this out of love for the character, and really all his best stories were when he was in high school. It's like, no. They weren't. Ultimate Spider-Man, literally all of his stories were when he was in high school, but that's because Bendis killed him when he was only 16 years old. So, yeah, I mean, that's kind of a given. But Spider-Man in, 616, for example, he was only in high school for 28 issues. None of the story arcs in there were particularly iconic. You got the introduction of some iconic villains and some iconic ideas, but none of the stories particularly were iconic. This other idea that Spider-Man, there seems to be this really prevalent idea that Spider-Man was always a high school kid, and it wasn't until recently that he got out of there. And that the reason they need to go back to that is because that's when Spider-Man was good. I don't know where that stems from because, again, he hasn't been in high school since issue 28. Almost all his iconic arcs came when he was college age, either about to enter college or already in college. And I mean, the Master Planner trilogy is probably the first major iconic Spider-Man story arc. And really is kind of the template for most of your quote-unquote generic Spider-Man stories, but that's because they're trying to emulate that, which is, Spider-Man has to fight this bad guy, doesn't know who he is, all this stuff starts going wrong at school, Aunt May gets sick, and he has the only means to cure her, but he has to stop this bad guy, and then he has to, choose whether to let them go or let May die, and yada, 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 etc. But it really started with the Master Planner trilogy there. And keep that in mind, too, because I'm going to come back to that. But the point I'm trying to make is that, no, the best stories weren't in high school. I mean, you can adapt some of them into a high school setting, and that's okay. But, this idea that Spider-Man was always at his best when he was that age is a complete myth. And I'm really tired of seeing so-called comic book sites and comic book fans actually try to argue that. On the other hand, the other side of the spectrum, the idea that I do apologize for my hair. I know that's very distracting. I desperately need a haircut. But the idea that somehow, it's bad because he's in high school. Like he's Spider-Man, not Spider-Boy. That's what I hear on the internet a lot. He did start as a 15-year-old kid. I know some people try to argue Stan Lee originally said he was like 18, 15's a retcon. Well, you could understandably maybe make him a senior in high school. I still don't think that's 18 though. But still, he was a teenager. He was a kid in high school. Period. You can bandy about the exact age all you want, but he was a high school boy. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And so it's not inappropriate or violating the character at all for him to go back to that setting. Alright, now, the thing is, there are some things about this I loved. I loved a lot of the action sequences. I really did. They were friggin' great, especially for a very raw, young, untrained, Spider-Man, no real experience. That was amazing. The way that they not only managed to have that come off, but come off so naturally. Like you didn't believe that this was a comedic pratfall inserted for the sake of a comedic pratfall. You genuinely believed, that Peter Parker, was trying to keep his footing there. Thought he could make that jump, thought that none of it felt really forced. And I think that's one reason why they wanted to, set this like right after Civil War too, is they really wanted to explore that element of the character. What would it be like with an untrained Spider-Man? Most of every other movie, when we've gotten like this era of Spider-Man presented in a montage where we never really see it. In The Amazing Spider-Man, once he started, with the suit and everything, they montaged it. In Raimi's first Spider-Man, once he started designing his suit and everything, they kind of montaged it, and then started, cut to one that had a lot more experience. To me, honestly, I think, they did about as good a job as you can expect. And then when they did transition into like the bigger, flashier fight scenes, just really well choreographed. I like that. Tom Holland's movements as Spider-Man, also very believable. When he's sticking to the wall and he slips or loses his grip and has to regain it, it'll be like one hand is still stuck while the other one slipped off or his feet slipped. And you will actually see his body like shift to the left, but his hands kind of like clamp down and hold him, and it looks like he's genuinely being dragged that way by force, but his own hand is, stopping him from moving. So that's actually a really neat thing that they achieved there. Visually, like, I have no real problems with the movie. I am trying to keep this spoiler free. because I think the dudes in the podcast are going to want to discuss this movie after we've all seen it. I think we've all seen it except one of us so far, but so keep an eye out for that. But yeah, in terms of what I really liked, I did really like that they invoked the Master Planner trilogy in one scene. And I loved the fact that they did it while emphasizing, again, the suit isn't what made him him. He was more than the suit. And that, he was more than the suit, he was more than Stark. And that is something that this movie really hammers home. And a lot of people were, concerned about that. They thought that this was going to be way too Tony Stark heavy, too Stark-centric. And while he does play some big roles and whatnot, it's really not. He actually has very little screen time. You actually have seen most of it, save for one scene, and even then you've heard audio from that scene in the trailers. There's a lot that they do in this movie that they actually do really well. But I loved what they did at the ending there too. I liked May. She was very likable. She was believable as a slightly younger Aunt May, and when I say slightly younger, of course, I mean 50s. That's the thing. Everyone keeps acting like Aunt May is like in her 20s or 30s or even 40s. It's like, no, she's the same age Marissa Tomei is. She's in her 50s. She just, happens to look really good for her age. And I know some people are upset about that. I'm fine with it. I thought she was actually really likable, if not particularly, memorable or significant, although I think she's going to factor a lot more into the next movie. Based on, stuff that happens in this one. I think that part of the reason they did do is because, that awkward moment when you're a kid and people think your mom is cute and everything. They kind of wanted that. But, with Aunt May and Peter's got to awkwardly deal with the fact that all these guys, even some who are like 10 or more years younger than her, like half her age even, are flirting with her and hitting on her and right in front of him. Like the sandwich shop guy who thought he couldn't speak Italian, apparently. No, that scene was great. But I also actually, and this might be a little controversial, I liked what they did with Flash. I know a lot of people really strongly dislike what they did with Flash. I actually liked it a lot. In the setting that they picked and everything, he did still come off as pretty Flash. Less of a physical bully. I do think they made him a little bit of a coward compared to Flash in the old comics. I mean, Flash may have been a douchebag, but I don't think he would have shoved other people out of the way to try to climb out of, a scary situation first. But, they kind of, instead of being, the douchebag jock, since this isn't a very athletics-focused school, they did kind of make him the snobby, prissy guy. Basically kind of like the way Harry Osborn might have been if he and Peter weren't friends. It sounds weird when I say it that way, but it actually really does work. And he really is still quite the douchebag. And I know a lot of people think that somehow he's not, going to come off as intimidating, or he's not going to, really be able to be that much of a jerk. And it's like, I kept telling people, you don't got to be like this jock to, make other kids' lives a living hell. And Flash does indeed try to do that. And is fairly successful with it, with Peter. God. Adrian Toomes, they weren't kidding. I can't believe I'm actually saying this, but I think the Vulture may actually be one of, if not the best MCU villain so far. Loki's kind of got a beat on style points, but I think he actually even beats out Loki a little bit in substance, and intimidation factor. And I think one of the reasons he does that is because you can kind of relate to him. You can relate to what he's going through. You can relate to why he's doing what he's doing. It's actually completely believable. It's not a completely jaded thing. I mean, he is, he is a very jaded person, but not to the point of, screw everyone else, I'm going to get mine. It's, screw the old rules, we're playing by new rules. And he's doing it for the sake of his family. And that is something that a lot of people can resonate to, and what he says about Stark, and how the rich and the powerful, they're up there, they don't care about us, we're all just, fodder, and we go out and we clean up after them, we fight over their scraps, we fight the wars that they want, etc. And that is a sentiment that a lot of people out there, do feel. There is a disconnect, like people don't care. And people who get power, even if they're given power by those people, seem to also ditch them for self-interest, and that's something that happens on both sides. Now, I'm not going to say, which side is, more right in that, and neither does the movie, and that's the cool part. It's just that people who have power, even if they say they care, they don't show it. And your actions speak a lot louder than your words. So he's doing what he thinks he has to do. And there's a parallel to it, and they kind of pointed out in terms of what Tony Stark did to build his business empire. And it's like, it doesn't matter if he stopped, that's how he got there. But he was really good. He was genuinely intimidating. I loved him. I did. Michael Keaton just knocked that out of the park. I'm trying to avoid spoilers here as much as possible. So I'm trying to only, go into detail on stuff you already saw in the trailers. But yeah, again, that moment when they referenced the Master Planner trilogy, oh my god, that was incredible. A little understated maybe, tiny bit. I wouldn't have mind seeing it, dragged out a little more, but incredible. Now, in terms of what I didn't like, there's honestly not a whole lot I didn't like. I do think Happy kind of came off as more of a douchebag than he typically would be. I don't know if he's just, kind of resenting the fact that he has to basically babysit this kid or what, but, he did come off as, harsher than usual. Maybe, I don't know, it could also just be stress, I suppose, but because of the moving thing. But, yeah, that's neither here nor there. Now, there is one thing, that I do want to talk about, and this is kind of spoilery. So, I'm going to talk about this for about 2 minutes, maybe. Well, minute and a half, probably. So when I say, just skip ahead about a minute and a half in the video and you'll skip this, okay. And here we go. Now, Zendaya is indeed playing MJ, but she's not playing MJ. And what I mean by that is that the character is specifically named Michelle. Her name is spoken in the movie. Okay, it's not one of those things where it's like, oh, it's listed in the credits as that because they don't want to give the real name. It genuinely is Michelle. But then she says, my friends call me MJ. And the reason that line doesn't work is, then Peter says, I thought you didn't have any friends, and then she says, I didn't. But it's like that's implying then that, what, he's her friend now, but, he didn't call her that. Ned didn't call her that. So I don't know. I really don't know. It felt kind of lazy. Like non-committal, like they wanted to make her Mary Jane, but then, they saw the backlash, and it's like, no, we'll stick to Michelle, but we'll throw that in as a wink. They either need to fully commit to that or drop it. Okay. I can't really say any more about that, but I'm really hoping that either gets hammered out in the future or they just drop that idea altogether. Now, Ned, I don't want to say he's in a category of what I didn't like, because I did like him. It's just, I feel like there were times he was there that he didn't need to be there. I don't know. What I did think was interesting was how the movie handles the idea of there being quote-unquote two shockers. And I did love, I know I'm kind of going backwards here, but I did really love the way that they portrayed Hermann Schulz. I normally, I always fear that they're going to make him, a joke, like Ultimate Spider-Man did, where he basically takes him out after insulting him a couple times and then just, webs up his gauntlets and then he's shocking himself. I also did like that the whole yellow checkerboard looking suit and everything that they had made sense in the movie because they actually did serve the purpose they did in the comics. They absorbed the shock, the vibration, and everything that goes back into your arm so that you don't break your arm, basically, which was really cool. I loved that. I loved that it was still there. I loved that it still had the same use. And I loved that they actually gave it kind of a practical application without putting the whole suit on it. And I love that Hermann Schulz was actually an intimidating badass. Now, that was cool. This movie actually does show off what Shocker is capable of. On a slightly smaller scale, in fact. And even then, it's still pretty holy crap. There are a couple more things I want to talk about. By and large, they're things that I did like. But, spoilers. And I'm trying to avoid that in this review. So, all in all, when all's said and done, I think Tom Holland did a great job as Peter Parker. I still don't know if I can call him absolutely the best, but he did a darn good job. I don't know. I need to see at least 2 movies, I guess. I want to see how he progresses, But in terms of playing the character as written, he did a great job. Everyone in this movie really did a great job. I think when the dust settles and all said and done, I mean, casting aside nitpicks and everything, even as a fan, and just judging this based on a movie, I would probably give it a 9 out of 10. It's a genuinely good movie. It's a genuinely good Marvel movie. Considering it had 6 screenwriters, it's amazing that it was as coherent as it is. They can work some miracles behind the scenes there at Marvel Studios, I swear to God. I definitely cannot wait to see what they do with Spider-Man next. And I really hope that Sony grows a brain and, calls off those Venom and Silver Sable Black Cat movies. But, and I'm hoping that Peter Parker sticks around in the MCU for a good while. At any rate, that's it from me tonight. I am extremely tired, as you may be able to tell. I'm sorry. But I will catch you guys later. See ya.